Hello everybody, this is Pablo Perez, and we're talking about the third-party conferences from E3 2014. EA started off with Star Wars Battlefront, but didn't really show any gameplay. They showed some really amazing stuff that looked like the original film, but like, better. It was hard to describe, but it looked really, really amazing. Dragon Age after that, they showed the tactical camera that you'll be using to control like the other members of your party. That looked really interesting. But something that was weird about it is it opened with like this dramatic movie with like a lady playing like live electronic cello. It was weird. I don't like that. Don't do that. It then cut to BioWare, who showed off. They were talking about the next Mass Effect, but that was going to be what they were going to do with that, and that all sounds super interesting and whatnot. And then they talked about how that segued into a new IP. So BioWare, they're working on stuff, but they didn't show really any games. They showed a bunch of sports stuff. For the most part, it's, like NHL 15, gorgeous, amazing attention to detail. FIFA 15, gorgeous, amazing attention to detail. The new Madden has some crazy new defensive modes or whatever, trying to make it more fun. I don't play these games, so I'm just sort of like, they look great. It looks like they're putting a lot of effort into it, but I don't know. And then the PGA Tour looked interesting enough, and Bruce Lee, in UFC. Both of the things that are happening, the PGA Tour has battleships in it. That's just as ridiculous as having Bruce Lee in UFC. In the midst of all that, there was Criterion's new game, which just seems to be like crazy. Like, there was a dude who jumped out of a helicopter that he was driving onto like a snowmobile, I think it was, or an ATV, and then he jumped off of a cliff into like a hang gliding thing, and this is all part of a race. And then there was like all these other cars they were talking about in vehicles, and just crazy amounts of stuff. That sounds super interesting. Briefly talked about Dawngate, their MOBA, which sounds interesting enough, but I know MOBA, so. Forget that they also mentioned Sims 4, which, they had a bunch of screaming girls, which makes me believe that like girls were screaming this entire time. Like, I don't know if, that's how girls react to video games, or if they paid girls to scream. It wouldn't be beyond them to do things like that, but that's beside the point. Sims 4, make your guy even more detailed and then kill Chuck with laughter. Battlefield Hardline, which is essentially Cops and Robbers Battlefield. It looks really, really interesting. It's on this, like, the streets of LA was one of the maps. I hope there's more maps than just that. There are bigger sections and stuff. But they were, like, up in buildings and doing crazy stuff. Like, it was like the opening scene from The Dark Knight, like, on crazy crack. They had done insane stuff with it, just having, like, the Cops and Robbers elements, rocket launchers, and the Robbers have helicopters, and it's insane. So, that looks actually really interesting. But it is still sort of a war zone, so it's not that different. The best thing about the show was that they showed more Mirror's Edge 2, which is essentially just Mirror's Edge. Like, I think it's like a reboot, and it's also open world apparently. All that is great, just great. And then they got like real parkour people to work on the parkour, and that just sounds fantastic. So Mirror's Edge, as soon as that happens, the sooner the better. Yes, Mirror's Edge. Next up was Ubisoft, who opened up with Far Cry 4, which is really awesome, and the villain played by Troy Bark. Next up was Ubisoft, who opened up with Far Cry 4, which is awesome. The villain played by Troy Baker was pretty much front and center this entire time. The second he showed up, it was awesome. It was just sort of like the opening 5 minutes of the game. That's all they had said that was, and then they eventually showed more later, but I will talk about that another time. They then had another embarrassing Just Dance reveal where everyone came out and danced and had their phones. It was like a phone game now, like everyone could just dance with their phones and stuff, as long as they had like a phone and a smart TV or whatever, or a computer or some garbage. And it was so totally staged, because like when they were like, oh, this lady won, she had the worst fake winning reaction I've ever seen in my life. But whatever, that was their call, and apparently Just Dance does very well on, stuff. Next they showed The Division, which, they kind of just showed more of the same, but in a different location, very obviously scripted dialogue between all 4 people playing the game. But it was very interesting to watch. It looked very kind of post-apocalyptic-y, kind of Last of Us-ish, with all the backpacks and whatnot. But, yeah, I mean, the game's going to be cool, hopefully. They just need to show more, because it looks kind of just one page. Though they had, like, a very cool trailer that kind of showed how the world went to crap, or at least New York, and they pulled on some heartstrings during the trailer. It's very well done. Next they showed the crew, and it had them driving from Miami to Los Angeles with some cutaways to other stuff, but it was really, really interesting. It was beautiful. It was cool to just watch them drive all over. Next they showed off Assassin's Creed Unity, which looks really, really good, like 4-player. Next they showed off Assassin's Creed Unity, 4-player co-op story mode. Hey, I'm down. That sounds really, really cool. And all the characters had like their own interpretation of the Assassin's Creed costume, which looked, I mean, they pretty much just looked like 4 hooded dudes. They didn't really have the little triangle that everyone's got at the top of their heads. But hey, you know, there was also a CG trailer that was part of that was really cool as well. Kind of gruesome, had people being headed. There was also a CG trailer that. There was also a CG trailer that came before the gameplay. It was really cool. It had lots of beheadings and a cover of Everybody Wants to Rule the World by Tears for Fears. So that was really, really awesome. After that, they showed Shape Up, which I thought was going to be super, super embarrassing. And it still kind of was. But the game has really interesting style. It's very clever and cartoony and very fun. And I can see how that could be interesting enough to use. And the guy was definitely like, hey, listen, working out is boring and it sucks and no one likes doing it. So we are going to try. They showed more on Valiant Hearts. I feel like they've been talking about this game for too long and not enough people know how it's actually played. There's just a lot of beautiful story, and if it's just a game where you read and become immersed in a story where it's just sort of like a visual novel but with actual interaction, that could be interesting, that could be cool, but they need to be more upfront with it if that's the case, because nobody still knows how you play Valiant Hearts. I don't think they do. I don't know. Last thing they showed was Rainbow Six Siege, which I thought was a reboot for SWAT, but it just essentially is a SWAT game. There was a lady in the demo. There's a lady who's being held hostage in her home by these 5 dudes, played I assume by other real people, and then 5 other real people playing SWAT members go in and try to get the hostage out and kill these 5 guys, I assume. They blew this lady's house apart, but that was really interesting. They had this destructive environment. I just felt really bad. They were just like, oh my god, like, you know, is someone gonna pay for this? But the game looked really, really good, and the destructible environment stuff was really interesting, and being able to like use previously made holes as cover and stuff like that is really awesome. So thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and keep the love going down in the description below. My name is Pablo Perez.